Well, that's what the Lululemon bag tells us. We should do something that scares yourself every day.
Yeah. Okay, now.
Who was I talking to who scared themselves? Oh, Jordan Norman Shaw, because he's going to go act on stage again for the first time in 13 years.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone, and welcome today. Today, our special guest on Not For Everyone is Eugene Stickland, better known by me as Eugenius. And
Thank you for keeping that alive.
my pleasure, because it's true. And I've known Eugene for a long time as a writer-poet and also a playwright. He is well known in the world as a playwright, and his plays are absolutely enchanting. And they often involve different elements like dance and music, song, poetry, and they always address the human condition. And often his plays are friggin' hilarious. They will make you laugh, they will make you cry, and they will make you sing. I love his writing. I love him as a person. And I think that they're interchangeable in some people. And in Eugene Stickland, that's certainly true. He's a teacher, as you know, and he puts a lot into the world that is of grace and integrity. And so welcome, Eugene Stickland, Eugenius.
Thank you, Sheri-D. What a lovely introduction. That was so nice.
Oh, my pleasure. There will be more. I'll say more of the other stuff before.
Oh, okay.
That was just on the spur of the moment.
Getting warmed up.
Just getting warmed up to your Eugenius.
Well, I hope people are saying nice things back about you, because you're one of my favorite people too. And I think an extraordinary writer and a gift to the Canadian and world poetry scene. Everything that you've done with spoken word and in your 13 or 14 books of poetry, which have inspired so many people. So I'm flattered to be here.
Oh, thank you. The first thing I'd love to talk about with you, and I think it's important for writers in general, just to know who the influences and the mentors. So who have been your mentors' influences?
Well, I'd say the first one, back in Regina, where I grew up, was Ken Mitchell. And maybe modern audiences won't remember Ken, but he was a huge force in Saskatchewan, I would say in the 70s and 80s. He wrote a play based on Othello called Cruel Tears, which he turned into a musical and did with Humphrey and the Dump Trucks. Yeah, and they did a national tour. And he taught a creative writing class at the University of Regina, which I just happened to go into. And I guess that class changed my life, because I was more of a music major at that time, and I was shifting into not being a music major and wanting to study literature more probably and to write more. And so he was a tremendous influence, very, very much I can't remember what he said or did, but I just remember him being very positive about the whole thing, and not never putting me down or putting people down. That's not the way he worked. He found the goodness.
Can you believe I was in that play?
No, I can't.
Not the original one
Okay.
with Ken Mitchell, but I was in one that Mount Royal College did as a summer tour thing.
Is that something?
And I played Flora Deal. Why do you treat me the way that you do? Because it was country and western music.
Yeah, it sure was.
And that's, I can't even believe I remember that line. Flora Deal.
Great line.
Othello's wife.
Yeah, Desdemona, right?
Desdemona.
Yeah. So he was big, and then I went off to York University and studied theater, and there my mentor was a man named Maver Moore, who was absolutely famous in Toronto, and I think he was the head of the Canada Council at once upon a time.
That's right.
Very prolific playwright. Now he would go back to the 50s and 60s when he was really active as a writer. But he was such a cool guy. He was older. He smoked a pipe. This is when you could smoke inside. And I would go to his office a couple times a week, and I remember him packing his pipe and getting it going just right. And then we would talk about anything but writing. He would just see how I was. And I learned a lot from that. It's just, he somehow valued me and trusted me and wanted to know that he had my back, I guess you would say. I think that's a great way to mentor people. You don't always have to be explaining things, or it's not always a teaching situation. Sometimes it's just being. And I appreciated that. And then if I would go to my time in Calgary here, it would have to be Bob White, who was my director of, I think we did 11 plays together. And although he's only a few years older than me, I sort of thought of him as like dad,
He has a dad likeness.
Yeah. And we would joke about me writing a new draft of a play, and it's like giving Dad your homework to look over, and how's my grade going to be? And my God, we worked a lot. That's a lot of plays. I think it was 11 altogether.
And were most of them done at ATP?
Yeah, we did 6, but we did 3 of them twice. He directed, I think, 2 of those, and then we did 2 at Lunchbox together, and then we did 1 with Hit and Myth Ground Zero. So that was sort of like, that was the great streak that I had of 10 plays in 10 years, which I can't quite believe I did, but I guess I did.
That is a lot.
Yeah, I think it's quite unheard of nowadays.
Yeah, it's completely unheard of.
Yeah.
And I went to several of those plays at ATP.
Yeah.
I think probably 3 of them at least. There was one that I laughed so hard that I think I peed myself.
Wow.
It was that play. It was so funny. It was like Christmas or so.
Yeah. That's My Old Chestnut, Some Assembly Required.
Oh.
And that's the first one I wrote for ATP.
Man, oh man, was that funny. And the whole family.
Yeah.
It was, it was the typical story of getting a family together.
Yeah.
And
I have had so many people come up to me and say, "How did you know what my family's like?" And I go, "I don't know."
Yeah,
what
it was
your
a typical
family's like."
story, but
It's
it was
just a
told in such a remarkable
archetypical
way.
family, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that play ended up having, I think, I stopped counting at 100 productions around mostly North America. And that was my calling card to Calgary. That's how I ended up here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was still living in Regina, really. And then when I wrote that and it took off, then I thought, well, Calgary seems pretty good. And ATP was a pretty big theater compared to what I had been doing, which was more church basements and whatnot. Beautiful theater, the Martha Cohen. And then they even came up with writer-in-residence money for me. So, I had a few... I would go to conferences in other countries like Australia, and people would say, "You mean your theater company pays you just to be, just to, you don't even have to write?" And I said, "Yeah, basically, that's what's going on." And no one in the world had any frame of reference for that. So, yeah.
But it was worth it for them if you were coming up with a play a year.
Well, I was. Well, every 2 years for ATP.
Wow.
And then I wrote for Pass Marai in Toronto and Lunchbox and a few others. Yeah.
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 It's a
So
huge...
kind of those. Bob was really a wonderful editor, like a dramaturge, in that, and a director, because I would always see him start with a positive note. I don't think I ever saw him give anyone a negative note. And I would watch a scene that was wretched, with actors when they're first getting the script, and I would think, "Oh my God, this thing sucks. Like, this is just so horrible." And then Bob would say, "Okay," and then he'd go up to one of the actors, maybe even the most sucking actor, and say, "I really like what you did on that one line. Can you try some more of that?" And then little by little, I would see, through only positive notes, them take on what he was hoping for in the scene and what I was hoping for in the scene. And I was blessed with some amazing performances, but they were never arrived at through any kind of negative browbeating or anything like that. It was just always very positive. With me, he could be a little more fierce, and I would have sometimes things thrown at my head, like 3-hole punches and stuff. But that's okay. If you're going to write plays, you're going to have beyond three-hole punch coming by.
You got to expect the staplers.
Yeah, but I appreciate that rather than someone pretending that it's just okay. And what you learn is that way better to hear it in his office, just him and you, rather than in front of 400 people who think that you're suddenly like the world's biggest idiot, because you in theater, in playwriting, you fail in a spectacularly public fashion, and that's
it's so true.
That's what makes it so special. Or sometimes you succeed.
Or you
too.
succeed. Yeah, exactly. Are there any playwrights that you feel are must-reads for people who are interested in theater, interested in writing for theater?
Well, yeah, there's a lot, but I think I tend to go back to the classics, I guess. And I have taught a few university classes where we have modern contemporary drama. We used to call it 20th century, but it's 2024, so maybe there's been a few written since then. But we usually start off with Chekhov or Ibsen. I'm more of an Ibsen guy. I did an MA in English coursework, still at University of Regina, and I got really interested in Ibsen. I love Chekhov as well, but that's sort of where the modern theaters thought this began, right? And then after that, well, then you take out of 100 plays that you could easily justify being on that course list. There's a few that you're always going to want to have. Over the years, at the end of the course, I'll put the names of all 10 or 12 plays that we've studied on the board, and it's usually Waiting for Godot and whatnot. And the one that always comes out ahead is Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. I don't know what it is about that play. It doesn't matter if someone is old, young, male, female, straight, whatever. That play speaks to people. And you were saying about speaking to some kind of sense of humanity. And that line that his wife has of attention must be paid. I think it's one of the most important lines in theater in the 20th century. Because if we don't pay attention to anybody, we don't care about anybody anymore. And when Linda is her name, attention must be paid. And she says it twice. And if you ever see the play live, it's a cry that is heard across the audience. And it's one of those moments that you go, how did he do that? How did he craft that so incredibly well? So that's one, I'd say. If I think of my contemporaries in Canada, it's kind of sad, you know. What I love about poetry, and we were at a poetry reading the other night. My friend Morag did some stuff with her cello, and Skylar read it at that. And what I noticed is poets support other poets. That's the whole secret to what you've done with spoken word and everything, right? That audience is not comprised of non-poets by and large, right? Everybody there is a poet. That's great. Now, if you were going to do a playwriting thing where you're going to have a night in the theater only for playwrights, you wouldn't get a soul. Everybody would be saying, "Oh, I don't want to see that. That guy, his writing sucks. I don't like it." So,
well, that's not all. That's somewhat true, but it's not all the way true, because I went to the reading that you did of your own work, and the place was packed with playwrights.
Oh, was it?
There was that. I think packed with there was a lot of people from the theater there. You're very beloved in the theater world, and there were a lot of people from the theater. There are actors, and maybe
true.
Not so many playwrights, actually, now that I think of it. It might have been mostly actors.
Well, actors always want to be friends with the playwright.
That's true.
They might say, "Who are we going to get for this role?" He goes, "David Lorady." And then they call him up, and Eugene recommended me. Oh my God. You're on the Christmas card list for life when you do that.
Oh my God! And yet you love Ibsen. That's really interesting, because Ibsen's so very depressing, isn't Ibsen?
But I like
Listen-
depressing. I think it's healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does have a lot of poetry. Ibsen has a huge amount of poetry.
Yeah, and again, the humanity of
Yes.
the characters and
Yeah, that's
what
true.
they're dealing with.
Yeah. But yeah, the death of a salesman, and it might be just the relationship people have with their father that they
Yeah.
reflect upon through the play.
Yeah, I think that for a Calgary audience, though, Death of a Salesman resonates because in Calgary, I think more than any other place that I've lived, there's an expectation that you should have all these things. And you should have them quite young, and you should have them without a lot of wear and tear on your central nervous system. So if you're 25, you should have a nice condo. You know, you should have a BMW, a very later model BMW, and a really good wardrobe, and a downtown
Tesla.
underground
Don't forget.
parking. A Tesla or one of those new things.
New
whatever they are.
things? That's a Tesla truck.
Jesus.
It's
That's
we
the
did the
stupidest thing
I
I've
sent
ever
him a thing saying,
Yeah.
please, I need to be your designer. Like, you really do need a designer, because what happened?
Yeah, that's-
What happened there? Like, it's the most
Yeah,
ill-formed.
it's really poor, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? So in Calgary, there's that sense of, I guess, entitlement, we would call that, and thinking that the world owes this to you. And I've heard people say, I deserve this. You don't deserve a new BMW. Nobody does. Like, are you kidding? Mother Teresa maybe deserved a new BMW. She didn't even want one. And I think most of the people who really do deserve one don't want one in the first place. But that kind of sense of entitlement, that's what goes wrong in Death of a Salesman, right? Because they realize that the dream they're chasing is just an illusion, and it's not worth chasing anyway. Does anyone ever come to that conclusion in a place like Calgary? I think so. I think that's our friends.
Well, I don't. I agree with you, but I don't think it's limited to Calgary. I think it is now that kind of materialism is everywhere.
Sure.
It's really,
I notice
and
it
there's an
'cause I'm- yeah.
entitlement. Everyone believes that they must and should and are owed everything, and we live in a world that literally circles around that, and it's hard to get away from it. It's hard to not have it in your life. It's in Vancouver, it's in Toronto, it's in Montreal,
Vancouver for
it's
sure, yeah.
not so much in Montreal, it's in New York, it's in LA, it's that that grabbing, the grasping,
Yeah.
the must-have,
Yeah.
and deserving,
Right.
and all the things, and you go, actually, we don't need any of this crap.
Not really.
And we're worried about the environment. Let us stop making junk.
Yeah.
And let's just put a complete, you are not allowed to do any more of those cruises.
Yeah.
Let's just stop the cruises. Like, let's just go, all cruise ships are being made into homes for people who don't have homes, and we're taking them off of the water where they do not belong. We'll put them on land, and you can live there.
That's a good
There's
idea.
a place to live. And there will be a community center there, and it will be housing for people who don't have housing, because we need that. And the cruising and the cruisers.
It's got a whole different meaning
There's
now,
already
doesn't
a
it?
certain kind of cruising that I will allow in my world.
So you envision,
Well, it was so great during COVID. I was like, oh, the cruise ships have stopped.
Well, they showed the canals of Venice were clean again, right?
Yeah. The cruise ships have stopped, and those people have stopped going. And they've stopped landing, and they've stopped buying, and they've stopped buying the many mementos that they can have that they're going to throw out 10 minutes after. And it's like, can we just stop with buying
Oh.
the things that we're going to throw out? Because there's nowhere to throw them anymore.
I heard it said that you are, especially in terms of Walmart and stores like that you are just an intermediary between them and the landfill.
That's right.
And you pay for the pleasure.
Yeah.
watching that thing disintegrate till you
I once
finally
I
throw it
met
out.
someone at Christmas time, and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna come over to my house, and we're gonna have a party, and it's gonna be called this, and we give these gifts and that we don't really want or that we don't really need, and they're wrapped
Whoa.
in paper that are going to be in the landfill this week, and you can come over and you can somehow, I don't know, and it's something about straws and something about we pass the gift to the next person, and this person can grab your gift and all these things." And I'm like, I'm not going to come. That sounds like the worst nightmare of my life.
Yeah, it wouldn't
And
be my scene. for
How is
sure,
that
yeah.
about giving, and how is that about generosity, and how is that even fun? Because all of that stuff,
Yeah.
all of those things under that, whatever it is you're going to have, is going to be, it's all headed straight for the landfill. Not, it's a 10-second joke.
Yeah. Yeah. Carried out for 3 hours. I do have a beautiful pickle tray that was given to us as a wedding gift
Yes.
that I could contribute to such an event.
Oh, it's like, that's the re-gifting.
Yeah.
The wedding gift pickle dish
But
that
it's
you
huge.
re-gift.
Like, you would need jars and jars of pickles, unless it's for something else that I don't know about. But I just
How
it's
many
like
pickles can you
colossal
put?
pickle tray.
How many
$400
pickles
worth of
can
pickles.
a platter?
Well, this one. Play your cards right. That might be under your tree.
I'm just thinking, don't
Don't ever give me
Eugene,
that.
don't
No,
put me
if
on the
I get
pickle
that
list.
Pickle tray.
Pickle tray
Yeah.
list.
Well, we always know where it is in case there's.
Yes, in case.
Just
in case you start disliking me intensely.
Oh, no, not
I
for
know
you.
if you and Belina give me a pickle dish, that our
Then
relationship
we'll know it's
that
over.
is a parting gift.
No. How sad would that be? That'll never happen.
Oh,
We're
the
not
parting
going
gift.
there. No.
You know, I often think of young writers, and of course, beginning and also people that are maybe not so young that have come to writing later.
Yeah.
And what would be like some tips that you could give someone of things that people might do or go or think or be or. And now for tips and tidbits.
Well, that's sure a good question, and I teach a playwriting course at Company of Rogues every fall, so I just finished that with 4 or 5 writers, 4 or 5 or 6. This term, I found this interesting. 3 out of 6 had mental health issues that they had to withdraw. Now, in the past, I've had maybe 1. And quite often, artistic people are a little more sensitive and perhaps a little more prone to such things, but it's full of 50% caught me off guard this year, and it made me ask myself what's going on in the world. I mean, because these are people who felt good enough about everything to pay the money and register and to show up. How many people can't even get to that point? So there, right off the bat, before you've written a word, then you have the issue of how are you doing mentally? It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy process. If you're really going to go through it to the opening night of the dramaturgy and working with the actors and producers and all these different political games that you need to play are difficult, right? In any art form, but I think theater is particularly arduous at times. Mm-hmm. So there's that. I worry just about whether people are going to keep creating at all, because it's not easy. And a lot of people say, okay, and you see this in poetry, I'm having some problems with my life right now. How can I straighten myself out? What can I do? I don't want to do something destructive. I've gone that route a few times. Yeah, no, you can't drink enough, right, to get away from it. So let's try something else. So let's try writing a book of poetry. Let's try writing a play. That way I can sort of purge myself of all these strong emotions that I'm wrestling with. I'll get them out on the page. I'll put them out there they're there, I'm here, everything's going to be great. No, it does. It's not easy to do that. It's almost impossible. If you can, then what is needed is it not to just be a personal complaint against the universe, but it's got to have some kind of universality that other people also will respond to it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not therapy.
No.
It is what you're saying. I mean, and I agree. It's not therapy. It is a way to work things out sometimes,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
But if you're going into playwriting or even poetry, it is personal therapy in a sense when you do it, you know, when like you're doing it at home and you're working things out on paper and you're looking at it. Therapy is therapy.
Yeah. It's different.
And it's different.
Yeah.
Because there's craft involved in writing. And there's the job for us, I think, is to help put it into the text, all of our sorrow, all of our tears, and also all of our joys. And then it is to present it so other people feel those things.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, becoming a problem too. As you know, there's a great book by Christopher Lasch called The Culture of Narcissism, and I'm not saying that it is a population of narcissists, but I see it more and more often. So that my problem is the most important problem, or what I'm dealing with is the only thing that really matters to me. There's not going to be ever any universality to that. So then the big question becomes, what will I write about? And that's what I can't answer for people. If you want to write, I'll help you write it. We'll find the most effective way to put it on stage. We'll get rid of some of the part of the problem too for playwrights, young writers for the stage, is that they're so conditioned and trained by movies. Well, I'll have a scene in a stage play of someone in a snowstorm trying to start a car because it's 40 below. And I'll say, how are you going to do that on a stage? If this is your stage, how long is an audience going to sit there waiting for this car to start? You know, like how they're paying $40. Like, then they get, and I said, that's happening in the car. So you can't even see them from, you know, so they get out of the car. Then they get back in the car. Not going to be anybody left by the time you get that car started. So we can get rid of that stuff. That's easy. That's training, and that's you know, the form. But how do you write about something that's suddenly important to a lot of people, meaningful to a lot of people? We get more and more niche, right? We say, okay, people with different complaints about the way their lives have gone because they've had difficulties because of their race, of their color, of their gender, of their sexuality. We say, man, you've been through some tough times. Go ahead, write about that. So they do, and it can be a great play. But if it's a play about a Filipino boy trying to make it on a basketball team in North America, that's going to have a very small audience of people who don't tend to go to the theater anyway. Then you're going to say, okay, we need $100,000 to present this play, and no one comes, and that's what's happening right now. Corporations are backing off because they're not getting enough exposure because things are getting so specialized. So
what happened to our stories? What happened to the stories? The stories, because that's what it is. It's our stories have somehow been watered down, and maybe it's because the theaters have tried to make it for everyone instead of
been too universal.
Yeah, well, not universal. For everyone is different than universal.
Yeah, true.
And I don't know what to say. I don't go to the theater as much as I used to.
Yeah, I don't either.
And I used to go to the theater all the time. Like I went to everything that I could get that I could get a ticket for, and I no longer do that because it's also not fun. Theater just used to be way
Yeah.
more
Yeah,
fun,
it did.
and it used to
You
have
could
more.
laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that said, you've had a couple of plays done in the last few years that have been very successful, like your play in Edmonton.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, where does a play come from, and what makes a play interesting? I read a piece in New Yorker magazine about a Saskatchewan artist I'd never heard of. Well, that's unheard of because I'm from Regina, and the woman's name was Agnes Martin, and it was Peter Sheldell, the great late art critic for New Yorker, who was writing about one of the lines in there is geography matters. Where you're from is going to inform the way that you see the world. And Agnes painted on a kind of a grid system, which if you're from southern Alberta or Saskatchewan, you know what the grid is all about. And I thought, well, why have I never heard about her? So then I started to do some research, and I loved her work when I finally got to see it. First just in reproduction, but we were in New York this summer and saw one of her pieces at the MoMA, and I've seen others that came to the Esker Foundation in Calgary last year. Chris Cran grabbed me by the arm and he said, "Did you see the Agnes Martin thing at Esker?" And I said, "No." And he goes, it's going to close in 20 minutes, let's go. And he pushed me into his car and we drove across Calgary. And we were the only ones in there. It's just beautiful Agnes Martin paintings. So I thought, well, I'd like to write a play about her. I thought that there was some expression there. And that the hook for me was this Saskatchewan thing, right? Other than that, we don't have anything in common. She's a woman who's, I suppose, a lesbian, but she said famously, "How can I be a lesbian? I'm not a woman." I mean, she had a great sense of humor about a lot of things, right? And I just kept reading it, and I kept putting it on there, and we've Bradley Moss and I in Edmonton at Theatre Network found a way to present it, and it was wonderful to do that. Maybe you were a bit of an inspiration with your Emily Carr play, right? Because in Canada we're horrible at talking about the people who should be our heroes. Agnes Martin's an absolute hero. It wasn't fashionable to be a lesbian in the 50s in the United States. It still isn't in a lot of states, right?
Yeah.
She was about one of the very few abstract expressionists who was female. Mm-hmm. She was schizophrenic. She had long months in Bellevue undergoing electroshock therapy.
So did Emily Carr.
Yeah. Their stories deserve to be told,
Yes.
and people learned. I mean, there's an educational component. I had so many people, art school graduates of Canadian art schools, who said, "Oh, I never heard of Agnes Martin." I said, "Well, let's change that, right?"
The ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and then some who probably haven't even heard of Emily Carr, which
Well, they've heard of
the school.
O'Keeffe.
Yeah, George O'Keeffe, sure.
They've heard of O'Keeffe. They're like, "Oh yeah, O'Keeffe," and then you say Emily Carr, and they go, and you go,
"Isn't there a school named after?"
And then Agnes.
Yeah.
Is a whole other level. And did you happen to bring anything to read?
I could have, but I might need a second to find it. But it's not from that.
Oh.
I was going to read. Well, I got two things that I could read.
Okay, but before you read that,
Yeah.
I want to stay on Agnes because I went to the reading that you did and it was so beautiful, and the way the music of the words.
Yeah.
And your work is so melodic and so cadence driven. Where do you think that arrives from?
Well, I mean, I began as a musician. That was when I went to university, I was a piano major, and that's what I wanted to do. I won a scholarship to go to Germany and study for a better part of a year, and that wasn't a music scholarship, though. It was language. And so when I was there, I didn't have a piano. So it was the first time since I was in about grade 8, like elementary school, that I didn't have a piano, and I couldn't practice for, compulsively 4 or 5 hours a day. I had to find different things. I remember being in Frankfurt and buying a copy of Ulysses. I thought, I've heard this is like one of the great novels. So in a English bookstore in Frankfurt in Germany, I bought Ulysses and read it. And just before I was in Germany, I went to visit my auntie in England, and she sent me off to the Stratford Festival. And I had, growing up in Regina, there was no theater then. Are you kidding? I mean, Ken Mitchell kind of brought theater in the, but there wasn't really any to speak of. So suddenly there I was at the Stratford Festival, and the first play I saw was Midsummer Night's Dream, which is a comedy, right? So you wonder, then I went off to Germany, and all that must have incubated, right?
Yeah.
Because that I would have become a playwright of comedies 20 years later is absolutely kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't consciously say, oh, I'm going to do that, not at all.
It's interesting, the music in your work that leads to the comedy.
Right. So when I did start to write plays, this was my genius thinking. Maybe my plays won't be very good, but if there was music in the plays, the music might be good. So that at least people would get something out of the evening. That was my kind of the way I thought about it. And there's something to it, right? But it was more integrated. When I met More Ignore Thee, then I met my kind of musical partner, when we did Queen Lear, and then when we did the Agnes Martin.
Oh, Queen Lear, yeah.
It's just The Innocence of Trees is what that play's called.
Yeah.
And then I collaborated with her on a play that she wrote, which she did at Shelf Life for the Wolf Woman
Yes.
the other night. Yeah. So that's been a great collaboration, and she's allowed me to continue to explore the musicality of language,
Yeah.
and not to forget it, I guess. I do hear music in language, and some people have it and some people don't. And that's how I kind of subconsciously, I think, base my opinion on their writing. If I don't hear music in their writing, if it's just that, I don't respond. But when
You
I
have
do,
to submit to it.
yeah,
You have to submit to yourself, and you have to know your own songs, and you have to have heard those rhythms in your
Yeah.
soul, and you have to listen to your soul as if it were music, and then it is a natural flow. Many people are not open to that.
Yeah. I found it recently in a few books I read. I read Fugitive Pieces,
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of 20 years after the fact.
Oh,
but
that's a beautiful piece.
isn't it wonderful?
What's her name?
Anne
Michaels.
yeah. And now she's just won the Giller Prize for
Yeah.
her new book, Held.
Yeah.
So that's on my Christmas list of books I hope to get.
Oh.
And then I
okay.
read
That's good to know.
Virginia Woolf, To the Lighthouse.
Oh.
And,
Oh.
that talk about musicality, right? And,
Yeah.
and the waves and...
The waves and the one and the two.
Yeah.
Oh, that book.
Yeah, beautiful.
I just love that book.
So you find it, and in
Yeah.
other books, you don't find it, and you go,
Yeah.
not so much, not interested so much.
Yeah.
But so I guess it's ingrained. I know that in my, in I think my better plays, I've read every line out loud, and I've often listened to music while I'm doing it. Listen to classical music or
Oh, what do you listen
contemporary
to?
classical. Well, I like the genre of contemporary classical. So, but I'm pretty conservative in my choices. I wrote a book called The Piano Teacher, and in that book he's playing the Rachmaninoff Second Piano Concerto, which is pretty standard fare, nothing esoteric about that. And he also plays Chopin waltzes, and he plays Beethoven sonatas, and pretty much like I was trying to do when I was 20 years old. So anything like that.
Yeah.
And then in the contemporary stuff, it's Max Richter and people like that.
I like Satie
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, gorgeous.
To listen to because there's so much space there.
Yeah, I was watching the rededication of the Notre Dame Cathedral,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
they did that one young violinist played some Bach, but as I was listening to what they were playing, I thought, how many wonderful French composers. So you're in Paris, right? It's a 1200-year-old or 800-year-old cathedral, and you can listen to only French music. Well, then they played that Sanson organ symphony with that huge crashing organ that you're listening to in Notre Dame. Like, what a thing, right? And then Satie and Ravel and Debussy and all these wonderful composers. It's such a musical culture.
Oh, yeah.
The French, yeah. I love it, yeah.
Yeah.
I still get excited, and I can actually play that.
But I think they're making a film of your of the piano player,
Of the piano teacher?
piano teacher.
Yeah, they say they are.
They might
say
be. Have they given you money?
A little wee bit, but
Oh, well,
we haven't hit the mother load yet. But
No, well, you never know.
well, I'm kind of starting to think I do know that. You know, one of the things I really admire about you, Sheri-D, is that you just do things. I invite you to my residency. Suddenly there's 50 people in there. We're all reading. We're all having a great time because you help make that happen. We don't sit around for 6 months and talk about how it could be. We do it, right?
We just party.
Yeah, it's just get on with it. In my mind, film world seems to be talking and talking and talking about endless myriad possibilities that have nothing to do with art, only about funding. And so I go to these meetings, and I think, in my mind, I've had an idea for a play. I've written 5 or 6 drafts of that play. I've seen that play produced. I've maybe seen it have a second production. I've seen it published in the time that we've been talking about this film.
Yeah. Film is like that.
Yeah. And I don't think it suits my temperament.
I don't know how to work around that either.
Yeah.
It's always been elusive to me. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't really either.
Maybe it's like, yeah, it's elusive. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's like either do it or talk about doing it, and it seems to be a lot of talk.
But eventually, they just have to get it in front of the right person with the right purse strings, as they say.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
And that might take some time, and then it's a certain imagination of magic.
Yeah.
Like just letting it go and hoping that it comes back.
Yeah.
I don't know,
If we can
because
get
I
to that.
absolutely have never understood that realm.
Yeah.
And the 1 or 2 times that I tried to foray into it, it seemed like if I dipped my toe into the waters, the ocean would eat my whole body.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that danger, isn't there?
It would just get sucked into the vortex of nothingness.
Yeah.
And so I've never followed it,
Yeah.
although I would love to, because I love seeing film and I love watching films.
Yeah.
And, both of us love films, so it's...
Oh, everybody. I mean, that's what we're brought up on, right?
Yeah. But that said, I think it might happen, and I'm going to stay optimistic on that front. I'm just going to go,
Okay.
let's manifest and envision. Let's get everybody to help. Let's envision, because it's a beautiful novel. I couldn't put it down. It's a beautiful novel.
Thank
And
you.
it would be a great film. So let's imagine that, and let's put it out there. Read and make a film, and Eugenius will receive hundreds of millions of dollars, and
That's right.
next you and Bellina will be living on a cliff in Portugal, and I'll come,
Yeah, come.
with Willow,
You make sure
and
you
we'll
come.
stay for weeks on
Come
end.
and
I'll
visit.
wear big hats. They'll be fancy, maybe with a flower, sombrero. Last year or recently, I was doing this thing. I was like, I must make money. I must make more money. I must make money. And then I was thinking, well, maybe there's something in geriatric porn or something. Like something we can do. And then I would be Señorita. Anyway, I could go on about it, but I'm not going to, because it's distasteful, and I don't want to turn people off, and they'll be don't turn off because
turning
you
the
have
channel.
Eugene here.
Remember when we have to get up and turn the channel?
Oh yeah, of course I do. And then there was those Zenith clickers.
Yeah.
They looked like some kind of futuristic, because they
yeah.
were.
Oh, totally.
And they were these big buttons, and to push them, it would practically break your fingers.
Yeah, that was television. Yeah.
Television.
No, I would like to see that made into a film. One of the problems with it is that it's a journal. It's a guy writing a journal. That's not very filmic in many ways. And it's also, when he's not doing that, he's doing a million scales and practicing piano pieces. So that's like the flavor, but I make that interesting, so that's good for a novel. How you keep that, how much of that you can sustain in a film. Well, we haven't even got to that point where we try to do it. You know?
Yeah.
I hope we get a chance to get to that point and see what we can make.
What else is in the works?
Mm-hmm.
What are you cooking up?
Well, that's what I realized I could maybe do a little reading from, but I'd have to find it on my phone, but it's there.
Okay.
But
Or
this is one of those things, be careful what you wish for, because it might come true. So Tom Phillips, you know Tom? You know Tom. Everybody knows Tom.
Yeah.
One of the Calgary's best songwriters, musicians.
country and
a
western.
Yeah. He wrote a song called Lack of Rain.
Yes.
And it's sort of it brings to mind the Depression
Yes.
in Saskatchewan.
Yes.
It hit me rather strongly anytime I heard it, because it reminded me of my dad's story for some reason. And my dad's story is so sad. It really is. Like, it would make you weep.
Ibsen.
I mean, it makes Ibsen look like the Marx Brothers. I mean, just a little bit of it. His mom was dying. They lived in a little wee town, and his dad was the blacksmith. And they lived in a town, a house attached to the forge. And then his mom was dying. And so her screams were going through the house at night, and his dad decided this wasn't a healthy environment for him to be in, about 11 or 12. So she sent him off to I love my dad, but I don't know how he survived. She sent him off to live in Medicine Hat with his older sister, who's 20 years older than him. And her husband, who was a World War I veteran, who was obviously suffering from PTSD and alcoholic and all this other stuff. So at one point, I think my dad was only about 14 or 15, he just left and made his way back to Saskatchewan and became a pool hustler at that young age.
That's fantastic.
Well, it's great, right? So I thought, oh, this is going to be the greatest book ever. So I got an AFA grant to write it, and I started, and after about 2 weeks, once I really put myself into that house in his position with the mother screaming and I thought, oh, this is just, I can't do this. I'm gonna jump out the window. It just was making me so sad. And so I actually called the AFA and talked to my, program person, and she said, no, you got to do it or give the money back. And I said, whoa. I'll give him the money back.
Don't go there.
I'll go, even if it drives me insane and puts me into some kind of institution for the rest of my life, I'll not give the money back. I'll write it. So I kept writing it, and then I started to find some subplots, which I made quite whimsical and absurd. And once I started to have those, it took the pressure off of my dad's actual story, so it didn't seem quite so in your face, horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still horrible,
It's
but
still horrible.
it's in with a lot of other things
Yes.
too, which aren't so horrible.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the way you go about that. So that's been a real education, and it's brought me closer to the memory of my father and what he went through and why he was the way he was. Do you know a lot of men of that generation didn't talk much?
Yes.
Yeah, he's one of them.
Most of them didn't.
Yeah.
They
That's
didn't
what they
know
say,
how.
right? Men of that generation.
No, they didn't know how.
Yeah, well, he didn't know how. Yeah, so that's been the big thing. I guess I'm up to, 30,000 words.
Do you have a
or
working
something like
title? Do you mind me asking?
that. Oh, I just stole Tom's title, Lack of Rain.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful title.
Yeah, and I'm able to bring it up again and again, because the constant thing is the drought and the heat and the grasshoppers and the scene that I would read. I don't know if I have it properly yet. It's all kind of roughed in. But so there's a great book, a compilation book by Barry Broadfoot called 10 Lost Years. and that's stories of people who lived through the Depression on the prairies, so mostly Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta. And there's also James Gray, who's a historian who lived in Calgary, who wrote pieces like he wrote Red Lights on the Prairies, Booze, other books. And one of the things that I hadn't really thought of was the again, this happy book, the swarm of grasshoppers that is so dense that it blocks out the sun, right? That you're suddenly in total darkness with the boom, 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 boom. And so I put a couple in a car, and then they get swarmed, but at least they're in the car.
Right.
But the sun disappears. And there's zillions, and this has actually happened.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, the sky got a little dark.
And the sound.
And the sound.
The sound would be enormous and really sketchy because it's that high-pitched screaming sound.
Yeah.
Speaking of screaming.
And then one of them, so his wife, the guy's wife, is freaking out.
Yes.
And she starts to scream. And while she's screaming, one of them gets into the car and flies into her mouth. At which point she loses it, like big time, like no coming back from losing it.
Well, if a grasshopper, if I was in a grasshopper store.
Which she has to pull out of, and so and her husband's watching this and he's freaking out and while bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
And finally the grasshoppers move on. It lasts a few minutes. So that's the scene I've been writing, which is kind of the money scene. Well, one of them, I got a few, because he just said there's a swarm of grasshoppers. Well, if you really dramatize it, whoa, there's a lot going on there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun to write. So then I thought...
And they're mean when they're in a group.
Like anybody.
Grasshoppers, they have a reputation to uphold. The
Well,
meanness of a
Have
grasshopper.
you ever had one go up your shirt or anything like that?
Grasshopper up my dress, of course.
Yeah. Any prairie person's
Any
had
prairie
that,
person's had a grasshopper up their dress.
I had one up my t-shirt.
Your skirt.
Or maybe one that went up my shorts. It was horrible.
God, yeah.
Yeah, so imagine billions of them. So then I thought, well, we have to do something with her now. And then I remembered the Weyburn Mental Institution. Well, you want to talk about a rabbit hole. My friend Steve Wolfson in Regina produced a documentary where he took actors and musicians. They went into the old Weyburn Mental Hospital, which is this immense structure that was built in the 20s, I think, in this little wee town in Saskatchewan, but it looks like something that you'd see in London at that time. One of the biggest buildings in the Commonwealth for mental diseases that was built in Weyburn.
Well, at least then people had somewhere to go.
Anyway,
don't get me started on that.
So anyway, my friend Steve directed this and produced this documentary called An Archaeology of Madness.
Yes.
Well, there's a rabbit hole that I went down because they were filming it in the old hospital and they had actors playing nurses and inmates and then at the halfway point of this documentary, they invite the local townspeople in. People who had only been aware of this, but had never, ever gone in.
How interesting.
Yeah, it really was. Or maybe even knew people who went in.
Yeah.
So one of the characters has to take his wife there. And so I went down the Weyburn Mental Institution rabbit hole.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And so at that point, I thought, I'm just going to go wherever this wants to send me.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to write a very different kind of book that is, I've got different styles of narration. Sometimes it's straight third person omniscient. Other times it's internal monologue. Other times it's dialogue.
Yeah.
Sometimes we know who's speaking, sometimes we don't.
Yes.
And I just say, okay, that's the night's work. Yeah. And I'm going to see how that can all come together.
Yes.
Without me creating a roadmap.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Just put it there and
I think that's really, it's so great and it's so risky and yet it's so, you have to have lived your life the way you have to get there in order to do that. Yeah. Because then you're truly following it.
Right, and I think I am. I know I am.
That's
it's exciting to do that.
Oh yeah.
I have to thank Brenda at the AFA, because if she hadn't insisted, I would have let it go. But I think I got into something much more interesting.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
I want to hear some of that. Come on. Come on. Come on, Eugenius. Read some.
I have to. Can we?
Well, yeah, we can stop for a second.
Okay.
They can cut, like they'll cut all
Okay.
of this. Like anywhere where it gets dull or anything, they'll be cutting it out. Although it hasn't gotten dull yet. So, I mean, I can continue talking while you're looking for it. I can tell everyone about this story, this thing that happened in real life. Recently, I suddenly went blind. I suddenly couldn't see. I know, I was overworking. I might have been stressed out. I don't even know. I can't really get into it because, you know, we all do that. We just get obsessed by something, then we're gone. And the next thing you know, we might be stressed out. We don't even know we're stressed out. That kind of thing's happening. I go blind. I can't see. I phone my friend, come get me. I have to be taken to the eye hospital right now because I can't see. I've gone blind. I can't see. They pick me up, take me there. They take me in. They lead me in. I still can't see. I can't even see the outline of things.
Jeez.
It's a blank. And they take me in, and then the nurse comes in, and she's putting things in my eyes. She's putting drops in, and it's really weird. And then she's got me up to this thing, and then she goes like the poof, poof in my eye, poof. And it's really, really scary because it's your eyes, and I can't see. I'm feeling these sensations of puffs going off in my eyes, like they're like powder puffs, and it's awful. And she said to me, you have a problem with your retina. You're getting migraines. This is a migraine in your retina. In your retina. And I'm like, I never knew there was such a thing. She said, yeah, it will calm down. Just stay here. I'm sending the doctor in, and then you know, half an hour goes by, and I'm sitting there. By that time, I've forgotten that I even lost my eyesight. You know, sometimes in Alberta it's like 12 hours waiting in a waiting room. But anyway, I wait. The doctor finally comes in. And the doctor says, "So what's going on here?" And I said, because I was so, you know, I was already losing everything. I had lost my eyesight, and I was already shaking, and I was already filled with grief. And I said to the doctor, I have a migraine of my rectum. And he goes, "Excuse me?" And I said, and then he goes, and then I realized, oh, I didn't mean rectum. I think I meant retina. So he said, well, you know, I'm not that kind of doctor. He said, but I can look if you really need me to. And I said, no, I accept that it's my retina. And then we did have a good laugh. And then it turns out that I had a migraine of my eyeball, and that it stopped me from seeing, just so you know, in the future, if that ever happens. And just so you know, my rectum is fine. And I can see again.
Well, I had an optical migraine once.
You had an optical migraine?
Yeah. Yeah, ocular migraine.
Ocular.
Yeah.
That's another thing, you get floaters.
Okay, maybe that's what I had, a floater.
Did you have floaters?
Well, I didn't ever have them called that, but when I got the optical migraine, the ocular migraine, I got sent to an ophthalmologist up on 20th Avenue North. And when I was waiting for him, all his degrees were like San Francisco, you know, in there. And of course, he would be at that age, right, of being like a super hippie. So he comes in and he's got like a little headband, he's got long hair, sandals. Hey, how's it going, man? I said, okay. He says, what's going on with your eyes, man? I said, well, I was driving down the Deerfoot, and suddenly it's like a shard of glass that I was looking through broke, and all these vivid colors of light, of purple and gold, start crashing into my line of vision. And I'm on the Deerfoot and I'm freaking out, but I could see a little wee bit out of the corners. So I made it to the Deerfoot Mall, and then I made it into the mall. I parked like 100 yards from any other car. Made it in. There's an optometrist in there, and they let me go into the back room, put a cold compress on, and then it kind of went away. And he says, "Wow, far out, man. That's called an ocular migraine. So you're really lucky to have that. Most people don't." And I said, "Well, yeah, but I was on the Deerfoot." He goes, "Oh, yeah, but you got
It's
off of that."
psychedelic, man.
That's okay. He says, "Next time it happens, just get on the couch, put the music up full blast, just sit back and enjoy the show." Honest to God.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same with my rectum.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Maybe it's from looking at computer screens too much.
Maybe. You don't want to do that. Okay, do you want me to read a bit of this?
Oh, yeah.
So his wife, he says, was getting a little cabin fever, so they've gone out for a drive.
Okay.
This would be back roads in Saskatchewan circa 1932, something like that.
All right. And it's dry. Hot.
Dry and hot. This is a man named Arn Edwards speaking. "We were driving along, all good, when I suddenly felt it was growing a little darker, like the sun had gone behind a cloud. But of course that was impossible because, as usual, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I guess you could say it was imperceptible at first, like when there is a cloud, like back in the day when there were clouds that would come rolling in and it would rain. Sweet Jesus, can you remember that, when it would rain? Seems so far off now, that possibility. And so, yeah, it grew a little darker yet. I guess with both my wife and I, there's a growing awareness that although there were no clouds, it was nonetheless growing darker. And then the growing question of what could it be, if not clouds, that was the cause of the mid-afternoon darkness. Just at the moment we might have made some headway with that line of questioning, it suddenly grew quite dark. Completely dark, black even, like in the dead of night. It was unlike anything I've ever seen or ever hope to see again. And then there came the sound. It was the oddest sound, almost like a hailstorm. But how could there be hail when there was no clouds? And then out of the darkness, we could start to make out the cause of it. 1,000,000 hoppers flying through the air, the sound of them landing on the hood and the roof and the windshield of the car, and the road ahead of us and the road behind us, millions of them pinging off the windshield in 1,000,000 different directions, this way and that, totally blocking out the sun, threatening to obliterate it in their wake. In no time at all, my wipers couldn't move them off the windscreen. I was still driving, if you can believe that, but I couldn't see a damn thing. And all those slimy hoppers under our tires were making it impossible to stay on the road. It was like driving in a winter storm. But instead of snow and ice, we were slipping and sliding over the slime of 1,000,000 grasshoppers. We slid in the ditch and sat there terrified at the thought of even having to step out of the car. Even a few of those a few of those evil sons of bitches managed somehow to get inside the car. With the windows rolled up tight, they still managed to find their way inside. They started hopping around and banging against the insides of the windows and the windscreen, while outside there was thick on the windows, dead and alive. You could barely see out, and even if you could see, the sky was still black with the rest of the swarm. I looked over at my wife. She was sitting rigid, opening and closing her fists like she was trying to grasp something. Maybe some kind of invisible railing, I couldn't tell. Her face was this reddish green color I'd never seen on a human being before, and hoped never to see again. She began to sob. She threw her head back and was taking in big gulps of air to give her sobs a little more punch. And just at that moment, one of those goddamn hoppers that had been clinging to the inside of the windscreen jumped away from it, more or less sideways, and flew right into her open mouth. I shit you not, right inside, all the way in, just disappeared in there. Well, that put an end to her sobbing and bellowing. She reached her fingers inside her mouth, way to the back, and pulled the thing out. It was all slimy and covered with her bile. She dropped it to the floor and stomped on it hard with her heel. Then she threw back her head and screamed the most blood-curdling scream I have ever heard, like she had had the devil himself inside her, so shrill and almost metallic sounding, but it didn't seem like it could have come from a human being. She screamed and screamed and screamed, and I had no idea how to stop her.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah, I'd never read it out loud before. So,
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it was, you know, when you start to imagine, like, to dramatize these things that people just say, there's a bunch of hoppers. Well, then you actually put the characters in there, and the terror and the horror of it all.
Yeah.
And this was people's lives for 10 years in this part of the world. Yeah.
Very vivid. The images are really amazing.
Yeah, that. Imagine having a grasshopper in your
Oh,
mouth.
their little heads, you know.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what they're like.
and then
They're like,
their little legs are like needles, right? Like
They are.
they're sticks. They're like sticks. So
Wow.
that's what's been keeping
they
me
are like
up.
little aliens.
Yeah, they are.
They're like little, so they have those little heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, some boys used to have magnifying glasses, and they would, blow them up. But
I know. People did.
my mom wouldn't let me do that.
No, the grasshoppers, because they're like little aliens. Although, you know, what they have done to crops, and then if there's too many of them like that, they can be just
Yeah.
ruthless.
Yeah.
Like ruthless.
Yeah.
They get to be bullies. What is a group of grasshoppers called?
I think it's a swarm.
It is a swarm. Okay.
I had a guy from around Shaunavon, Saskatchewan, once say that they were so bad they ate the green paint off his back porch, and it was true.
They will practically
Anything
eat a
green,
fence.
they will eat. Yeah.
And you're not safe there. But what a great image, and what a interesting direction to go with your book.
It's I got to find a way to tie all these characters together, but that's starting to become clear to me. So the next step is that they find a farmhouse and get her looked after, and then drive her down to Weyburn
Wow.
because she doesn't recover. At least so far in the writing, she hasn't. I don't think she will.
Oh.
I think some things are just too much. And I was thinking too, if you recover from something like that, if you're going back to the world that is comfortable and is healing, that's one thing, right? But if you're going back to a world that's already rotten and hot and dry and everything's already bad, why would you go back? Like if you've really retreated somewhere in your mind and gone comatose or whatever, and you start to imagine how it would be to be better and to be out of that hospital, and all you're seeing is grasshoppers and dead crops burning in the fields, heat.
Where would the hope be?
Yeah,
Where's the crack?
where the light gets in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't found it for her.
There's maybe a little crack in there.
Yeah,
Because otherwise, yeah.
The family that
Is there hope?
Well, the family he goes to gets help from are like Bible bangers, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And that he finds their answers or their solutions too easy, too pat, too not realistic
Right.
in his mind.
Right.
Like formulaic or
Yeah.
something. And I think a lot of us find religion that way. In a crisis especially.
Yeah, there are many ways out. There are many ways out. And sometimes there's no ways out.
Yeah.
And I don't know what hope is anymore. In my book I was writing about what hope might be a lot
Yeah.
in this world or in the other realms that I was writing about. And that's one of the questions that certainly I have been asking myself spiritually.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question.
Does it exist? Is it possible? Is it even a viable question? And I don't know, maybe there's something else beyond hope. Really, I really think there has to be something beyond hope, because hope seems so unavailable.
Mm-hmm. Well, faith would be in there somewhere,
Maybe.
mingling around with hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure I always understand the distinction between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, you know, if you look at religion, a big part of it is faith, even blind faith. That you need to have that in order to be a religious person, right? And if you're not particularly religious, then where do you find faith? It's not a simple question that I go to church Sunday morning and get my faith level, you know, brought back up to, where my engine's not going to overheat. But we find it somewhere. We must find it somewhere. We might find it in nature. We might find it in art. We might find it in other people, right? But I think it's an important thing to keep looking for. Because if you're not religious, no one's telling you have faith. Or if they tell you to have faith, they don't tell you how to have it, right? But it's a good question to ask yourself. Where is this faith coming from? Why do I have it and that person doesn't have it? What am I doing? How does it come into being?
Yeah.
How do I keep it alive? Mm-hmm. Why don't I give up? All these questions, right? Now, there was one other thing that I had. It's not mine, though. So I was looking at Facebook today, and Helen Mirren read this Ulysses by Tennyson on the Stephen Colbert show, right? And I was listening to it, and it's about old age. Old age hath yet his honor and toil. And then there's these beautiful lines that I just wanted to comment on. 'Tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order smite the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles, whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in the old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And you know, I heard those, that's from Tennyson's Ulysses, right? And I heard those lines and I thought, what I've been thinking about with my new book is, do I have the courage, do I have the energy, the belief in myself to keep going, right? And it's so easy to say, I've written 19 plays, I can sit on those 19 plays, but those don't matter to me. What matters to me is what is ahead still. And that to me was so inspirational to hear her read those words and then to find it on poetry.com and read them. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to share that about not giving up, mm-hmm. ever.
No. Yes.
Finding the resolve to keep moving forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what we all have to do.
Yeah.
That's what we all have to do right there.
Yeah. When you and I met, we were at the height of our powers. It's 25 years ago. You were about to start the whole poetry movement that changed North American poetry and write 14 books of poetry. I was about to write 19 plays. Look what we did in our 40s and 50s. Okay, no time to stop.
No.
Maybe we aren't as strong as we used to be, but we can still keep moving forward.
And maybe our physical beings aren't as strong.
Maybe not.
But our spiritual beings might be stronger.
Yeah, I think they are.
And I think you have to go forth with the spirit.
Yeah.
Because you have all of that you carry with you from your past.
Yeah.
But now you can also carry the ancestors with you.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do as older people.
Yeah, you become more
And
aware.
you do never stop.
No.
You just got married
Yes.
last year.
Yeah.
You have not stopped.
No.
You have continued to love and to be and to change and to accept
Yeah.
and to drive forward. Because we can't look back.
No.
Spiritually, forget about it.
Yeah.
We're only going forward.
Yeah.
And that goes for young people as well as
Yeah,
older
absolutely.
people.
Yeah. Just don't ever stop.
We won't stop.
No.
We're not going to stop. But we'll stop for today. Thank you, Ryan.
You're so welcome. That was really great, you guys.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Later, agitator. In a while, bibliophile.